The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. All right. So, hello, everybody. This is Brian for Bringing Down Security. We're actually streaming this, so you can watch the video later on if we have any kind of, screen shares or anything talking about what we're doing. But we have an interview, which is something we don't always have on the stream. We try to bring in interesting people when we can, and I've been very interested in this person who is helping to organize this organization. Am I saying the name Esther right? Is it Esther?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted me to use your handle, you wanted me to use your name, but it says Esther's iPhone on the video. So, yeah. So, Esther, tell us a little bit about yourself and what the Seattle Community Network is about.
Cool. Yeah. So, unfortunately, well, I'm on my phone. I don't have any slides, so I'm
fine.
just gonna chat.
That's cool.
And you've shown our website and everything.
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Esther. I'm a PhD student in computer science at the University of Washington in Seattle. And actually, this project was started kind of just before the pandemic. Our research lab at UW actually works on internet access technologies, normally for rural, remote, and what we used to call developing regions. Now we call it Global South. But basically, we do open source software and usually like commodity hardware for creating like internet access solutions for people who can't connect to the internet. And usually what this has been in the past is rural villages, like remote villages without internet connectivity. And we would install probably either a long distance like wireless link or a satellite connection for what we call backhaul, which is kind of the connection back to the global internet to get people internet access. And this, helps with a number of like sustainability and quality of life factors. It allows people to talk to their families, improves like health and safety and all that stuff, while also introducing risks. So there are usually some kind of cultural risks associated with it. People might, find themselves like, if they're an indigenous community, sort of like accelerating like influences from outside that might decrease their, indigenous language uses and stuff like that. So there are a lot of kind of research questions around this. And so our lab develops open source technologies specifically for cellular networks, and also studies kind of the impacts of internet access and sort of how to customize these internet access technologies for specific groups. And so kind of as we went into the pandemic, we started turning our focus to, more the local area, like who in the Seattle area or in, the Puget Sound or even the US more broadly still doesn't have connectivity, and what can we do about it? And actually we had started this, the project like a little bit before the pandemic even, because we've been thinking about like urban community networks. I started to do work with NYC Mesh a little bit. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, NYC Mesh is another like community wireless project in New York. It's very large, so much larger scale, probably an order of magnitude larger in terms of people and number of devices than our network right now, and also much older and more established. So seeing that model, I was pretty inspired. I was thinking, oh, maybe it is useful and possible to have an urban network that has some of the same goals as our rural networks. So normally we would partner with like maybe the local government or some private entity, like a school within a rural remote village, and like provide a cell network for the entire village. But here, what's what entity does that translate to in like an urban environment? Can we partner maybe with community centers, schools here, or even, people who do low income housing? So we were considering, how to get connectivity to people who need it here. And that became very relevant during the pandemic. So we applied for some grants, like COVID relief grants, and we got actually two, one from King County and one from the city of Seattle. The research lab, so we still do research, and pretty much all of the grad students in our sort of subgroup of our research lab, which is like tech for development in general, we have a core group of students who all work on different connectivity projects, some of them in international contexts, but we all also contribute to the Seattle network. So that is a core of students that started out, but the Seattle Community Network as an organization has grown like a lot recently in terms of kind of volunteer capacity. And we have a lot of community volunteers in Seattle who are excited to like participate in a not-for-profit internet access network for many reasons. Many of them, are tech workers in some other capacity and think ISPs should be done differently. It's not necessarily fair that like each, for example, in a multi-unit home, like especially in a low-income area where a lot of people, can't afford to pay that much for internet access, each individual unit in this building, even though they're sharing like an internet connection out to the wider world, is billed separately, like by an ISP for their service. And maybe it shouldn't be that way. What would it look like if internet was cooperatively owned and also community owned and maintained? Like, can that model work? And so, tech workers who are also interested in the technical aspects, like who want to use their skills and do it kind of as a hobby, to learn more about networking and how it works. It tends to be a combination of those interests, both like kind of the humanitarian goals and the technical goals. But really, like, it takes like all kinds of people to run this kind of network. Like, particularly, we have some people who are most interested in providing user help and support, and so we've got at least one member who's like very passionate about this. And so his name is Jonathan. He like provides technical support every week at the Filipino Community Center. He just like staffs a community help desk for people, especially like seniors who need a lot of like tech help with their computers and such. So yeah, and then I would say one of the areas that we are currently severely lacking in, because we have so many kind of techie hackers, but not so many like organizational people, is like we just need people who are happy and excited to interface with users. So when we get like requests to our public phone number or our public email, saying, hey, like I live in this area and I don't have connectivity, I need connectivity, to follow up with them and say, hey, like we got your message, we would like to coordinate with you to like give you a piece of equipment to try and see if you have like service at your area, and things like that. So
cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of awesome information there. I definitely have been a fan of what y'all have been trying to do. During the pandemic, we were interviewing folks like the CISO of Seattle Public Schools, April Murdoch, who, we were learning about the issues that education teams had during the pandemic. And, one of the things that I think some people forget about Seattle is that it still has problems with inequality in terms of what people have or they do not have. I didn't realize that we're in a tech sector Seattle, you think, has got, Amazon, we got Google's, we got Microsoft's, we got all these startups and everything. And yet there's 75,000 children that didn't have access to internet or have access to technology just as a whole. And that's just kids. It doesn't necessarily mean adults and everything, which is, probably a whole other thing. Some of these kids' families probably don't have access to those either. And I was really surprised at the technology disparagement there. I actually had assumed that it was better in Seattle, and sounds like it's not any better than any other place in the country. And you would think, being a tech heavy area, that we would not have that issue. But what are some of the challenges that you have? Because setting up a cellular network, I mean, you can't just walk up to the nearest building and slap an antenna on it, I'd imagine, or climb a tree and pop in a 5G antenna. So what are some of the technological challenges that you're having there? I think one of our folks also asked about backhaul. Are you using satellite communications versus point-to-point microwave links? Or what does the technology stack look like there? And what are some of the challenges you have with, hey, don't put this antenna on top of my building? I'd imagine you've got issues with like ease of use or ease of access or something like that.
Yeah, so those are all a lot of very good questions that we have worked to figure out over the past 2 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess starting with the backhaul question, our cell networks are basically an access network. So they're like the kind of last mile or the final connection to the user, whether that be a mobile phone or what we call a CPE, a customer premises equipment.
Okay.
And that's basically kind of like a hotspot. So it has like both of these types of devices have a SIM card in them, right?
Right.
And that does our authentication to the cell network. So what we're running is 4G LTE, not 5G.
Okay.
First of all, yeah. So I mean, 5G, it's really just that like the architecture is very similar on the back end. And the software stack we use, like an open source stack called Open5GS, that can do 5G, but we only run the 4G components because like right now the hardware is just way more accessible. And so it's a little bit better fitted to our use case. But in any case, like the cellular part is really the access network, which we can plug into any kind of internet connection, whether it be satellite or point-to-point wireless link, or even just like a wired fiber connection in a building. And so right now we have 7 towers, and none of these are like actual towers. These are more like tower sites where you have a rooftop, and you do basically put a cellular base station, so like a radio, serving the cellular access network with, of course, an attached antenna, and broadcasting that signal from that rooftop. And these are also the way we've designed them. They're not omnidirectional because you can get a little higher quality of antenna and like further reach and coverage using like panel antennas.
Right.
So it's kind of like a sector antenna going in a specific direction. So you kind of have to choose where our coverage area is going to go. And so the whole process of like acquiring a site it can take quite a long time, where you have to, usually reach out to someone like a community organization or school, develop a partnership with them, and develop enough trust that they will let you basically install all this equipment, this radio equipment on their roof, and then find a power source for it. And so sometimes this is, just available on the rooftop and we can hook into it. In some cases, we've actually had to put in like a new electrical circuit in in the machine room on the roof. And that is actually, it kind of tends to dominate the cost of the installation if we have to do that. It is much more like cellular equipment. It's hard to find, the size, like the power of transmitter that we need on power over Ethernet, or like some, if you've heard of that, it's like, you can deliver power to some devices over Ethernet, but not the ones we use. So we sometimes have to put in like conduit and electrical and stuff.
Wow.
So let's see. In terms of the backhaul, it's really case by case. In some cases, like the sites that we ended up making partnerships with to install our cellular equipment happen to be buildings with a gigabit fiber connection available. And in some of those cases, like within the city of Seattle limits, we actually have a partnership with the city of Seattle where they have been like really helping us out a lot by negotiating with CenturyLink to provide us some of those connections for free. And
Right.
outside of the city of Seattle, they don't have any jurisdiction. So we sometimes have had to buy that connection. So
Wow.
we've got one of those at the Skyway Library. And then in some cases, we actually have connectivity through the UW. So the University of Washington IT told us, oh, you can have like a gigabit here for upstream transit, a gigabit there. And so we have used that and hooked in a like wireless point-to-point link to it and had a wireless point-to-point connection to some remote site that doesn't have its own like fiber connection available, but we can hook into UW fiber over this wireless link.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and so it's kind of a patchwork based on what we could get.
Right. Right.
Um,
So is
yeah,
this is this this cellular network, is it, if I went downtown, would my phone connect to it and do 4G, or are there specific handsets for this, or would it be completely seamless and I wouldn't know I'm on Seattle's community network or just a regular Verizon system?
So it would be really interesting to be able to do roaming with like different carriers, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So right now, in order to connect to the network, you need one of our SIM cards. I've got one right here. We've got
Oh,
like
very
a
cool.
little UW SIM card. It's, we have to bulk order them in like 1,500 or more, but
Mm-hmm.
you can print your own SIM cards, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
Um, and so, like what we have is we have our mobile devices and our CPE, and we put in our SIM cards. You have to register the SIM cards in our cell network databases. Right now, our architecture, just because this is what we're used to deploying and running, is that of like an edge core network where you have there's this concept of in cellular networks, a core network, which stores all of the users and their authentication credentials and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and manages and routes the whole network. We have that running locally at each of our 7 sites.
Hmm.
So it's, we were thinking, okay, there are kind of privacy advantages where maybe each site would want to be managed separately by a separate organization. So they'd want to keep their credentials separate from each other. There are trade-offs there. So we're still kind of, figuring out what the best architecture there is.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, you need like our, hardware token essentially. Right now, you can't just use your own SIM card to authenticate to our network, and vice versa. And that's why you can't, attach to someone else's network with your T-Mobile SIM card or
Right.
et cetera, unless they have a roaming agreement between those telecoms so that you can.
Okay.
Yeah, and so right now, our 7 sites have like their specific coverage areas, and if you have our SIM card, and your SIM card, the number called the IMSI, or the International Mobile Subscriber Identity (IMSI),
Mm-hmm.
if that is registered in all of the 7 networks, then you'll be able to go to any of those coverage areas, and your phone or whatever device will attach. However,
Okay.
so they are limited coverage areas. They're like, you can see them on the map on our website. If you go to either the Connect tab or the Map tab, you can see our coverage areas there. And so the thing is that many of our subscribers are using the CPE, the customer premises equipment, which is what we call like a fixed wireless device. So they're kind of designed to be static, not mobile. You would mount them on your house, and then we usually depend on line of sight or almost line of sight to like point the CPE towards the tower, and then they're directional receivers, so they'll
Right.
receive the LTE signal and essentially get like kind of a hotspot like internet access, but not mobile.
Cool.
Then
Okay.
we, yeah, bring an Ethernet cable in and plug it into a wireless router, and that will create Wi-Fi. Um, yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, I'm showing on the stream right now a picture of the areas that you're covering. So for those of you unaware of Seattle and looking at this now, you have here's the 90, which goes across Lake Washington, at least one part of it to Mercer Island. This area up here in the north in the yellow is by Garfield Playground. I believe this encompasses a lot of downtown. Is this the Cap Hill area? I forget. Let me zoom out here. One sec. No, maybe. But yeah, they have a number of different areas for this. So you can only make calls, surf web, what have you, in the areas that are covered by this. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's a way for me to see the stream that you're streaming.
Sure. Go to twitch.tv/breaksec. And I'll put it in the chat window here for us. So twitch.tv/breaksec, BRAKESEC. For those of you listening at home, tell your friends. That's what it is. So, yeah. Oh, thank you for the bits, Hawks fam. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Don't give us money. Give it to Seattle Community Network. Make a donation to them. I don't need the cash, so please feel free to donate to them and help out with this stuff if you can. I mean, some of these are fairly big areas in Seattle, so that's really nice that you're able to get that kind of coverage there. So.
It's kind of inhomogeneous. So you can see one of the things we have been working on over the past few years is like we have a lot of students who undergrad research students or even just like community volunteers who will develop software for us. And so this is a web app that's actually pulling or that takes data from a Android app that someone developed, like one of our undergrad students, Zenon, developed that you can make speed test measurements on, the speed test and signal strength. And so that actually reports directly to this API, which is hooked into like a database, and then the database displays the live data points on this map, which is pretty cool. Right now, we don't have because Zenon just graduated, and we don't have like a core team that's working on the Android app anymore. So, any app developers are welcome to reach out. We also like the lead student on the web app actually also just graduated. And all of these things are sort of volunteer run, but it's like really very impressive. So all of these little squares are test points where we've gone around with either the app or with some other devices and taken measurements of how well our network is performing at that place, just to verify coverage. And because like all of these coverage areas are estimates, they're really just based on Google Earth topographical data. And what we do is we try to like pinpoint exactly where our antenna is and do what's called a viewshed analysis that will show you exactly where you can see, like where has line of sight from that point. And so like this is really a rough estimate of the coverage area, and it's all dependent on what buildings are in the way, what trees are in the way, all of that stuff.
Even like I would imagine even atmospheric conditions, because when certain conditions are it'll that I only know this from the Navy. So radar ranges when you're getting ducting or something like that may go over the horizon. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's so would this be considered a conservative estimate? So it may actually go all the way out to Lake Washington, or may all go all the way out to the Puget Sound, or is this just is this a conservative estimate?
Not super conservative. I would say it's more optimistic, because we really we don't want people to see that their address is like not within the coverage area and just give up. because
Right.
we actually, every time someone requests connectivity, we'll go out and actually test at their place. So you might see further down south, there's um, a network at the Filipino Community Center. And so my house is actually like a bit south of there. The Filipino
Hmm.
Community Center, that's the pink one, yeah. And so I am living outside of the coverage area, but um, I was able to mount one of these CPEs on my roof, like quite a bit above the roof. Like I extended it with a piece of PVC pipe, and I was able to get connectivity even though I'm well outside of this rectangle.
Right.
So yeah, for it's definitely not the most optimistic estimate you can get, but it's we want to include people by default
Right.
if we think they reasonably might have coverage and then test there. And we have occasionally had tests where we realized, okay, there's no coverage here, even though you're within the rectangle or just outside of it. So we really have to go on site and verify.
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
we've got a few discussions in our chat window from folks like Digital Warheads talking about microwave links doing 325 megabits over 25 miles distance. We're dealing with radios. We're dealing with gigahertz and megahertz and antennae just being thrown up all over the place. I'd imagine that there's some licensing issues, or you can't just throw up pirate radio and expect the FCC to not get involved. So are there any regulatory hurdles for this? Let's say I'm out here in Snoqualmie, so I'm out east, I'm super east. If I decided I wanted to throw up a 5G antenna on top of my house or a 4G antenna, I'm thinking people are going to have an issue with that, or somebody will have an issue with that. So, what kind of regulatory hurdles have you had to go through with regards to just getting this set up? I mean, did they have any heartburn with this? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. This is one of the most interesting aspects, in my opinion, of our deployments. So yeah, actually, if you go back to our website, we have a little tutorial that explains a lot about like how we've set this up. But this is all legal. None of this is pirate radio. If you go to learn more, we're I think we need to edit our website to be a little more legible. But so if you learn more, that's our doc site. If you go to, I guess, infrastructure, um, that's going to give you our tutorials. Yeah, so we've got I probably down under step 2, the last one, down, yeah, step 2, eNode B and SAS setup. That's really, this explains kind of the spectrum licensing. So there's this new like set of regulations around the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum band called the Citizens Broadband Radio Service Band.
Okay.
And so this is it's a dynamic licensing scheme. It was kind of you know people have been talking about it for the last 5-10 years, I guess, but it started really, this infrastructure started to really come out around 2019 when we were starting up the network. So we are able to actually dynamically request spectrum, like this licensed spectrum from the FCC. And there are a number of private providers of what's called a Spectrum Access Service database, or SAS. So you sign up with one of these services and you have to register each device you put up with them. And all of these databases, they have to follow a certain spec and they all sync up with each other. So this ends up being
Right.
a big national database of all of the devices running in this CBRS band.
Okay.
And so this allows, like, there's a, it's like a tiered system, but there's the general access tier, which is generally open to any devices. And then there are priority access devices, and priority licenses have actually been auctioned, just like a traditional spectrum auction.
Right.
So, like, for example, Verizon bought over $1 billion worth of this priority access
Oh yeah.
spectrum. But the nice thing about this scheme is, well, I guess, first of all, even above that priority tier is like the incumbent tier. So this spectrum used to be used by Naval Radar, And so that it isn't being used so much anymore, but at any time the Navy can come in and decide to use it. And so
Right.
sometimes our devices, including Verizon's devices or whoever's priority access devices, will get kicked off and then move to different channels.
Okay.
So that can happen. And, same, likewise, if my general access device is on spectrum that then someone else has a priority license for, then my device can get kicked off and moved.
Right.
However, at most half, like the rule is more than half of the band has to be available for general access in any given county. And so it's unlikely at least right now, when not a lot of people are deploying general access CBRS devices, it's unlikely for our devices to have no spectrum available in their area that they can use. So the thing is that our devices have to request spectrum every 4 minutes or so. There's
Right.
like a minimum, heartbeat time period. And so our devices have to maintain internet connectivity, which is, usually we like to have, just in case the backhaul drops out, we like to be able to run offline.
Right.
So yeah, but at this point, it's not possible for our networks. That's a limitation.
Okay.
So our devices, dynamically request a spectrum. If and then like a license is granted, and then the radios are allowed to transmit. So this
Right.
is like encoded, in their firmware. They actually won't turn on the radio unless they have a license.
Okay.
And yeah, and then if the spectrum gets reallocated, then the database will send that information to our device, and the device will move. So that does cause like periodic outages, but those outages will usually get resolved within a minute or a few minutes.
I see. Okay. So when you were mentioning hotspots or like these little, they're femtocells, right? They're like a femtocell, or something similar.
Yeah, we call them small cells.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the like, femto, pico is like a little bit unclear sometimes.
Right. Right. Yeah, I had one at one time when I lived in Austin because we could not get 4G. We lived down like in a little hollow, so we didn't have. At the time, it was only 3G, and it was like super slow. And so I got one from Verizon because I was like, how is it that Verizon always has a 5G signal at their store? And then I was like, oh, okay, they're running this stuff and making it look like their cellular network is like really, really good, even though they may be in a dead spot. So obviously the ones that I'm taking home is not going to handle at scale something like this, like the buy cells or what have you. How many so you've deployed this to at least seven to 10 areas all around Seattle. How many people do you have operating on this network at any one time? Is it an invite only thing? And how do people find out about you so they can enjoy this or use this?
So we're kind of in an interesting transitional phase right now. Basically, because our all of our initial hardware deployments were through these like grant programs. We started out very explicitly with a mission to serve like underserved people who don't have access to other connectivity. We've realized that it is kind of in our best interest for like long-term sustainability to also include other people who are not necessarily, like very low income and can't pay.
Right.
But we should probably have a mix of people who, like, we still serve, very underserved areas and groups for free because that's kind of our mandate. But also we can like we should be able to add other people and like accept recurring donations and things like that, and also labor and volunteering and helping out and participating in the community. So yeah, I guess we have like a community governance structure. We have community meetings every month. If you're interested, I like highly recommend that you come to those. Those are all on our calendar. So right now, stuff basically as we kind of come out of the worst of the pandemic, uh, the rules we've used are changing. So in the past, we've only pretty much done installations for these low income users who we have grant funding for. Like all of our user devices, including cell phones and the CPEs were like allocated for those like users who fall in specific categories, like people who are housing unstable or seniors or unemployed, etc.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, and we have to fill out like paperwork saying, certifying that they are in these categories, etc. So now I think like as we are starting to have or like apply for more funding sources that are more general and not like COVID related,
Hmm.
we are going to be able to do more installs with maybe even like not on LTE. Like we can branch out from LTE and do also other types of wireless point to point gear and like uh, unlicensed wireless access points, et cetera, and sort of expand both the technical scope and the user base of the network.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, I think the best way to really get involved is to kind of join our Discord, start talking to our community, and like coming to the community meetings so we can hash out all of the sort of governance pieces of our network.
Right, right. No, that's awesome. Um, so I don't live in Seattle. I live in Snoqualmie, of course. But I'll be moving down to San Diego. You said there was one in New York City? Do you know of
Mhm.
any larger initiatives, say in Southern California or Austin or Houston or areas like that with a large disparate maybe geographically and with folks who might suffer from economic hardship that are also taking advantage of mesh networks like this?
Mhm. Well, I guess technical nitpick, our network is currently not a mesh network. We
Oh,
don't
oh,
currently have, yeah. So like, the mesh architecture, I guess, is technically it's like one in which you have a bunch of nodes that are kind of like equal hierarchically speaking, and like
okay.
there are certain specific types of protocols that you call mesh protocols. And so
Right,
NYC Mesh is technically a mesh network, I guess. Yeah, in like well, that's a longer discussion, but
right,
um, so yeah, I mean it's really that these other projects, like what we share in common is being community networks. Like we are community owned and operated, and sometimes this can be volunteer based, sometimes this can be like nonprofit based.
right.
So in San Diego in particular, there is a network run by an organization called MoHuman, and I have been in discussions with them like for quite a while. I think the technology they chose to use may have changed a bunch because early on they were thinking LTE, and then they switched. So there's a MoHuman network, and I can put you in touch if you want to be connected.
Smo
Um,
human.
Oh no, that's the right one. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's Mo
okay,
Human. Yeah. No, it's
okay.
no S at the front.
Oh, sorry.
uh
Yeah.
yeah, you were on the right place.
Okay.
Um
Very cool.
yeah, and I mean really there's one in Baltimore that's kind of in maybe at a similar stage in its growth as ours. But that is a wireless mesh network using very similar technology to NYC Mesh. There's a project in Detroit, so the Detroit Community Technology Project, which we take a lot of our inspiration from for our like community like partnership design, and they have a digital stewards program, which is a community training program to teach people from the local communities we serve, like how to build and operate this network. And that's very important to us, to our philosophy. So that's been a really important partnership for us with that network.
Right.
And yeah, and also I feel like through my own and like this lab's academic connections particularly, and other connections with other networks, we have a lot of strong partnerships like in the community networking space in general.
Mm.
So uh, one of the initiatives we participate in is called the Tribal Broadband Boot Camps. So this is a initiative supported by like the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and also like native tribal governments and advocates for setting up or like supporting indigenous tribes having their own like sovereign ISPs. And so we sometimes go and like teach for this, and that's like a partnership that's like very near and dear to my heart.
Very nice.
And yeah, and we also these days we have a bunch of teaching initiatives in Seattle as well. So particularly, I think one of the most important things for community networks to have is within their volunteer base, like people who are interested in teaching, because it's really through teaching that we build up our community of practice.
Right.
So like we have our digital stewards program both for adults and youth. Like we recently started our second youth cohort, teaching high school students how to build and operate internet infrastructure.
Oh, very cool.
And so yeah, that program is running at the Rainier Valley Leadership Academy. It's like an after school program. And
Okay.
so we have a bunch of students who we're teaching about everything from Ethernet cable crimping to like how IXPs work
Right.
and all that. Yeah.
It's funny. I went to B-side San Diego and the wireless village and, the lockpick village and everything down there. It was like, now you get to crimp your own Ethernet cable. I'm like, I didn't have to go to B-sides to crimp Ethernet cables back in the day. I don't know. Yeah. I was just amazed that somebody's like, oh, I crimped my first Ethernet cable. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's not that fun. Trust me, especially when you get to shielded twisted pairs. It starts to hurt the fingers after a while. But this is really awesome. So one of the things that I was thinking about was some of the privacy issues involved here, because you're technically using a network where people are going to be using these devices. And, I'm sure the hackers out there are probably going like, well, this is like a stingray or something like you might find at one of the hacker conferences or something. How are you protecting the people who obviously need this service to survive or to, make phone calls or to, potentially get interviews or to, using this to improve their lives? What are you doing in terms of privacy to make sure that they're, maintaining their privacy? That you mentioned database of information that is being kept. So what kind of agreements do you have with them to understand how they're keeping their privacy safe?
Well, I guess the short answer is this internet service, like you can kind of think of it as akin to, a Wi-Fi network. Like when you get on a public Wi-Fi network, all of your packets are getting routed through somebody else's infrastructure. Like
Right.
When we present this network, we do say, okay, this is like at least partially open to the public.
Right.
Most of our, I think you had asked a question at some point about like how many users can be on the network, like what's the capacity. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of our network sites do end up being kind of in public spaces. So we do literally take our CPE and attach it to a Wi-Fi, essentially a hotspot that, for example, in our we have some tiny home village sites, and so they
Okay.
have Wi-Fi networks attached to them. And so you'll have 2 or 3 CPE connections being shared by like the entire tiny home village through like a network of Wi-Fi access points that we set up on
Right.
that connection. And so, we do tell people to treat it as, not necessarily like a private connection, but
Right.
at the same time, we are working on routing all of the traffic through a VPN. Right now, that's like we're one of the things that we're actively setting up.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got kind of through some new partnerships with just like individual generous community members. We have some like new rack space for running our VPN endpoints, and so
Nice.
like that is, yeah, that's like a priority for us because we really want to like keep users as safe as possible from any kind of either malicious hackers or even just like the ISPs that we use as our backhaul.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, like I really think people should be using VPNs like where they can. And I guess the other, important thing is to educate people on things like always using HTTPS and using a password manager, like these kind of user side security like practices.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So, Digital Warhead had a question. If what is your ideal situation? What does the goal look like? Because you've got this going on and it's great. What is the ultimate goal of this, or what is the roadmap look like for the next year? Is there more sites being rolled out? Obviously that's probably incumbent on how many volunteers or how many resources you have. But what is the goal look like in the next, say, 2 to 3 years here for SCN?
For me, so at this point, I feel like the number of cell sites we have is already quite large for the size of the volunteer base. And it's at this point, I think we should be focusing on recruiting users. So like we did have this mandate to serve like underserved neighborhoods in general, and we have been focusing a lot of our user recruitment on public library patrons and tiny home villages and places where people are obviously like more obviously having needs. We've also started recruiting through Seattle Public Schools, and we've had a couple of basically students who would be enrolled in these like hotspot programs because they don't have internet at home, but these hotspot programs maybe have been like defunded because the pandemic is no longer. So the like there is still a need among these specific communities. It's just kind of finding those people, reaching them. And so I have been putting a lot of effort in that direction, but also I would like to build up our community of practice a bit more. So, we have our SCN hack nights where we all work on things together. We have our community meetings. Basically, I would love it if we would kind of solidify our governance rules, get our community sort of in order so that we can kind of move forward together, knowing how to add users who are not necessarily low income, and also like how to integrate our community together. We don't want to artificially like separate people and exclude people who are are more low income users from like the community of practice. That would be totally against the goal and the philosophy. So, community building, and also extending the network, maybe adding different technologies than just our LTE side access network, and hardening the core infrastructure, I think will be very important. So things like we're trying to figure out like how to, peer at the Westin with BGP, and making sure our VPN, our management VPN and our user plane VPN are all like stable and set up correctly, making sure we have good repeatable network configurations, and making sure that all of our monitoring infrastructure and alerting systems are stable and working well, tuned well. All of those things are kind of core network operation tasks. And we are working on that right now, but there are too many tasks for the number of people available to work on them. Open source or volunteer organizations, it's hard to sometimes find resources. So I applaud you for super organization, and the passion is definitely coming through. I can feel that. I want to be cognizant of your time, and I know that we've probably gone a little longer than the 45 minutes. And if you're late for a meeting, I do apologize. But
How would people get a hold of you? I know I've already mentioned the Discord a couple times in here, but is there any other avenues there where people might be like, hey, I work for blah, and we'd love to partner with you, or we'd love to get your message out there. Where do we send a marketing or a PR person to? How would they get a hold of you for that?
So let's see. We have our like organizational email is I can put that in the chat or anything. It's like LCL, which is Local Connectivity Lab at
Okay.
SeattleCommunityNetwork.org. Local Connectivity Lab is our nonprofit. That's the one. We are on Benevity. We have a number of volunteers who have signed up with Benevity with their companies so that you can like match, they can do like volunteer time matching via donations through Benevity to the nonprofit.
Yep.
Let's see, we have a GoFundMe. I believe that's linked on our website. And in terms of like connecting to the community, it's mainly Discord. We also have a mailing list, which is also linked on the website. So, if you do only do email, we do announcements to the email list. Discord is much easier for kind of real-time collaboration, but you can email us, and there's also a Meetup group, and I believe Meetup does event notifications to email as well.
Yep. Okay. So I would, if you are not in the Seattle area, Portland or some other large area like that, put out some feelers to see if there's something similar going on in your area, or do like Infrared and the other folks did, and start your own. See what reach out and see what it takes to help get something established in your neck of the woods there. So. Esther, thank you so much for coming on. I was very interested when I first joined this, and I still think it's very cool. And thank you for letting me know about San Diego. I'll definitely reach out to them and get in, see what I can do to get involved when I get down there in next year. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure.
This has been great.
All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.